Welcome, everybody, to Tammy Tuesday, the podcast of life, love, and purpose. Very happy you're here today. I am excited to share my guest with you. She is a best-selling author and business leader. Her name is Jessica Bennett. Jessica, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I told you when I reached out to you for this that I was getting serious nudges about having you on here, and I don't ignore those and I don't take them lightly. And they don't happen all that often because I have kind of a set, there's people that I know or that kind of come to me or flow to me from other people. Like we were just talking about, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
And with you, I was really getting strong nudges. And it was interesting because the way we met, when was that class?
March of this year. So about 6 months ago.
Okay, so 6 months ago when we met, which was cool because we met in Katie Kylene's community through, again, her Connecting with Creator class. I've mentioned that so many times on this podcast because, again, our community's tight. And I remember when I came in there and met you and got all kinds of cool messages. And then when I learned all about a part of your story, I was like, whoa, my mind was blown. And it made sense based on everything that I was receiving and getting. And that was during a healing session that we had done together. And it was cool because, again, then time goes by. And I had mentioned to you, I was like, you'd be really interesting to have on my podcast because your story is really interesting. And I think something the world needs to hear. Little did I know how much you were already way into your process of what you were creating. I really didn't know that. And when I reached out to Katie, again, the nudges came strong and hard. And I reached out to Katie and I was like, okay, you need to connect me with this woman that I met at your gathering. And she said, oh, Jessica. And of course, Katie lit up. She said, oh, I'm getting goosebumps. She said, this is perfect. She said, yes, you do need to have her on your podcast. And I said, yeah, I'm getting these nudges that are they won't stop. And it's time for her to share her story here. So that was why I reached out to you. And I'm really happy that you graciously accepted, even though I kind of came out of nowhere.
For sure. Of course.
But then when Katie shared your Instagram and just so I could start kind of looking into what you'd been doing, because I had not been connected to you since that day that we met. And I was like, oh my gosh, she wrote a book about this and she's doing all these things. And I had no idea. I mean, I really had no idea. So clearly God, universe was like, hey, this girl's ready.
Yeah.
So I want to start, Jessica, with hearing more about just some background because you moved to Arizona how long ago?
18 months ago. So I've been here about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you moved here for a big reason, and that was because you were leaving sort of an old life behind you.
Yes.
And that was what I learned when I met you.
Yes.
And I want to know a little bit about your background before your marriage, kind of where you came from, because usually there's indicators of things that happen in people's lives. So I just want to get some kind of background because I didn't get that part of your story.
For sure.
So give me some Cliff's Notes on that part of your story before we dive into everything that's happened since.
Yeah. So I grew up in Danville, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So a small town in central Pennsylvania, very traditional family. You grew up in a very sheltered life. So tiny little town, class of 200 people in my graduating class from high school. Right. Small community, everybody knew everybody. And I was always fiercely independent. I was always an achiever, played sports, did well in school. And I knew by probably sixth grade, when I graduate from high school, she out. Going to college, I'm going away. I can't wait to really start my life.
Do you have siblings?
I have an older sister.
Okay. And were your parents married? Still married? Okay.
Yep. Still married. So graduated in the early 2000s from high school and went to University of Virginia. It was such an eye-opening growth experience because, I hadn't traveled. We had traveled a little bit, but I really hadn't been honestly exposed to much of life at that stage. So, I remember going to college and there were people from all over the world. There were people from every background imaginable.
Especially a school that you went to. A lot of people go there.
People were insanely smart. had such worldly experiences at age 18, whereas I'm like, I'm from a small town, like I just haven't seen or done that much.
Right.
But it was incredible because it was the first time I found myself surrounded by people who aspired me to grow and experience new things and lean into so many new and different experiences. I'm still close. I actually have 5 of my best girlfriends from UVA coming out in November to visit me here in Phoenix. And we're going to do a girls' weekend. So lifelong friends and just had an incredible experience. It was an amazing, amazing 4 years of life. Graduated, got my job with the company that I still work for.
Oh my gosh, really?
Almost 20 years later.
Wow.
Yeah. So landed the corporate job, moved to shockingly to me personally, back to Pennsylvania. But I moved to Philadelphia, started working and met my future husband. And we started dating, working full time, bought my first condo, was just living life. That's where it starts to get into the relationship story. But I would say again, I was sheltered. It was a beautiful life. I wanted for nothing. I'm so grateful for my parents for the values that they instilled in me, a good Christian upbringing and a childhood that I'm really proud of, and instilled really great values and life skills in me. But being as sheltered as I was, I recognized a few things have been worked on and that I really reconciled and embraced about myself. And the first thing was I sought external validation. I had very little self-love and at times none.
When did you recognize that? Later?
Much later.
Okay. So we're not there yet.
We're not there yet, but that was something where I even look back on college boyfriends, right? And it was that fall fast, get serious fast. And it was that codependency of, seeking that external love, that external validation. That's always, I wanted to be loved by everyone. And that was always kind of a part of how I operated. And that then facilitated, my adult romantic relationships, and eventually my marriage. So that was one piece. And then just being as sheltered as I was, it was, I was like, kids in college do drugs? Oh my God. There were just it was a lot of growth in a really short period of time, which I'm grateful for. Again, mostly really beautiful, incredible experiences that I learned a ton from and were very formative to who I am in adulthood. But I truly had to endure what I did subsequently and following in my early adult years to be where I am today. And there is no shame, there's no blame. Honestly, I'm so grateful for all of it because it afforded me the opportunity to finally really embrace who I am. And whether God, the universe, your soul's just timeline to break a lot of generational karmic patterns and loops that I think I've been experiencing for lifetimes. To finally say, I'm going to do the hard thing and I'm going to choose differently.
So I'm getting goosebumps. I say that a lot because I get a lot of feedback through my body. So I always say that. My cousin always teases me. She's like, you say that the most on your podcast. I can't help it because I get a lot of goosebumps. Okay, as you were just talking, I heard a lot of things. So one of them was you talked about external validation. That is so common in the world. So many of us, including myself, have lived many years of our lives doing that until you get to a point where you realize you're doing it and then you're like, oh, okay. But that awareness is huge. So clearly you got that in your way, and we'll talk about how that comes to you. But so I can totally relate to that. And I know a lot of listeners can relate to that because so many of us really do feel like in order to feel full or accepted, it comes from outside of us, which couldn't be further from the truth. And which is why I love the title of your book, by the way. Love it. We'll get to that in a minute. But that was the first thing. And then the second thing was You talked about, because I didn't know your story, your backstory of your youth, and I was waiting for little things, and I didn't hear anything. And then you just now said, I think this was a karmic, generational thing that you've been experiencing that led you onto the path that you might have been experiencing in this life, and you've now decided to break it. Two things are cool about that, and we're going to get into the real meat of the story around your book and everything that's happened. But I think that really happens a lot. People in their lives, they find themselves in situations that don't make sense. They're like, why is this happening? How did I get here? And because you're like, every experience up to this point would never have led me to here, right? So that's a really big awareness that you have that I think a lot of people really never get to. So that's huge, obviously, in your growth and what you've experienced and how you're transitioning. So let's talk about, I want to go further into your relationship because this is where it comes from. You were in a marriage, you were young. Talk about how that relationship started and where it ended.
It started how I think most of my romantic relationships started of we meet, we have great chemistry, fall fast, and we're boyfriend, girlfriend, and spending all the times together. Friend groups are meshing. It was a blast. So I had just graduated from college. I'm living in Center City, Philadelphia. He was finishing his college degree in the city at a university. We lived in the same neighborhood, and it was great. Sporting events and museums and all the
fun
things,
stuff.
all the things in your 20s. And I am very committed to my career. And I was, going through those foundational experiences in my career, and my company is headquartered in Minneapolis. And especially at that stage of the game, it was like all roads lead through Minneapolis. And so it was 2009. So I guess I was 3 years in, and I was offered a promotion, but I had to move to Minneapolis. And I took it.
Okay. And where was your relationship at this point? Were you married, engaged?
No, we were still dating. We dated for a long time. And so, he was obviously upset and, it was at that point working and like in Philly. And I was like, well, I'm doing this. I need to do it for me. And hindsight's 2020, right? But when you're 25 years old and you're in love and whatever, he ended up following me to Minneapolis.
Okay.
And I didn't recognize it at the time, but I write about it in the book. This was a pattern. So I had 2 serious boyfriends in college, and both times I chose, and generally a career location over them, or being in the location with them.
Wow, okay.
And it was like a very clear choice that I was consciously making, but I think subconsciously making the secondary choice that I'm choosing this over you. Both times I made the choice, declared the choice, executed, and then they were like, well, I guess we're breaking up because we're never going to see each other.
Right.
And so in hindsight, again, 2020, I was like, oh, that's what I was doing. And so we worked that situation out. I ended up moved back to Philadelphia, did another rotation in Philly, but then it was back to Minneapolis. And so I chose again.
Wow.
Again, he followed. That was a longer stint, and it was hard for both of us personally, being in a different place. And I think some challenges started to surface in our relationship. We then moved back to Philadelphia. We were engaged at that point, and I remember feeling in my body like, this isn't right. There were just certain things that were off. And I thought if we got engaged and moved towards marriage, it would we would solve the challenges. And that's not actually you date to find out and if there are that big of challenges and red flags, you need to just walk away.
Right. What works, what doesn't, and where you decide.
Right. And so I knew in my body, I remember having a meeting with our wedding coordinator and literally had like a nervous breakdown after I met with her. And I was just like, but what do I do? We're living together. We have a dog together. Our families are connected and we have a wedding in like 6 months.
Wow, you felt trapped.
What do you do? Yeah. And so I continued to choose to say like, I just need to be a better partner. I just need to work harder at the relationship, you know? And so it's on me. I'm an achiever. I'm a driver. I'm going to figure this out.
Right.
And obviously just got more and more challenging, and it wasn't all bad, you know, like it wasn't all bad by any means.
Right. But you were questioning heavily. You're starting to feel resistance, like something doesn't feel right, but you chose to ignore that.
At that point, I chose to ignore it, and I chose to marry him.
Okay.
We all choose.
Yes, for sure. 100%.
And because of, the generational pattern anchors to my grandmother, so my maternal grandmother, who my grandfather, her husband, passed away early in life, so in their 40s, and she remarried someone who wasn't a fantastic human. I think their relationship, again, was good and fun, and they were great companions at the beginning, but over time, she just embraced that she made her bed and she was going to sleep in it. And, you know, they stayed married until he passed away. And
how close were you to her in life?
We would see each other a few times a year, but I respected her so immensely. Like, she was the matriarch of our family.
Okay.
And instilled like so many incredible life lessons in me. But I observed that relationship, enough of it that it was ingrained in me that was, to some extent, acceptable.
Got it.
That when you signed up for something, you were committed to it. And, you know, as the woman, you were the caregiver, and it was your job to serve and fix and all of these beliefs.
This is on your mom's side. How did your mom feel about that situation? And your parents feel about that situation?
Everybody, it was one of those things that like you didn't really talk about, but everybody knew.
Okay.
Because what were we going to do about it, right? It was her choice.
Her choice, exactly, yeah.
And so I do think a lot of that carried over into what I tolerated and accepted in my own marriage, and that I put the weight on my shoulders. And it got worse and worse.
What started to happen? What was happening in your relationship?
Growing distance between us, just talking less fun, less things to look forward to. And then he was always a drinker, but it became a problem. I would say through the pandemic and then following, it was a problem. And so with where he was mentally and emotionally, and just the brokenness, frankly, of our relationship, it became just unbearable. I forgot what joy felt like. I never saw my friends. I never saw my family. I did work trips and I did work stuff. And then otherwise it was all about me trying to take care of him, to do all of the things around the house and the property and personally, because he was just so like mentally and emotionally challenged at that point because of the substances. I think because of the toxicity of our relationship over the course of time. And it just became more and more clear that he wasn't willing to invest the time and energy. So I was getting therapy. I was encouraging him to do self-care, do all of these things. And he would start something and then not, and went to rehab and relapsed. And we kind of went through many cycles of, are you going to choose this? And it finally got to the point of like, he was so clearly never going to choose to work on our relationship and invest in us in the way that you need to have a successful relationship, let alone marriage, that I broke. I shattered finally.
Wow.
I held it together for years and years.
Did people on the outside have any idea how
nobody
the
had
depths
any
of
idea of anything?
So you were really protecting this privately, and that was breaking you until it finally did.
Until it finally did.
So was there actual abuse going on? Was he abusive to you, or was it neglect? How did you view it? How was the relationship in that regard?
It was emotionally abusive, and I don't claim innocence either.
Right.
There was just a lot of it. It started out as resentment for the moves to Minneapolis. There was a lot of resentment, and I think that is the crux of like how a lot of when you're deciding if you want to enter a partnership with somebody, you have to be, and I know this now, like so aligned on your core values.
For sure.
Because if any of them are misaligned, there ends up being resentment. And in my mind, that's where it starts to break and crumble. And it's a really hard place to come back from when there's deep resentment towards one or the other. And
self-sacrifice, and it's to the point where it's at your core, like you said, your core values.
And it's because neither of us wanted to choose the hard thing, which was we're clearly going different directions and we should probably just break up.
Right. That's big, though. A lot of people can't see that. That's why so many marriages and relationships
last as long as they do. Like, it's baffling, right? And people stay in situations.
Or they end it, but they don't, because honestly, it can go both ways. You can speak up, and suddenly the other person can speak up, and you can realize, oh, I see you. Okay, this will work. Or, oh, I see you. This will never work. Yeah. It can go both ways. So either it keeps a relationship together when both people are miserable, or it can break a relationship apart, which is better for either side because they now have vocalized what it is. So it can go both ways. You're totally right. But a lot of people stay together for the wrong reasons when they're not meant to be together.
Well, and I would just say, so the book is titled Choose Yourself,
which I love.
And it was the greatest life lesson that the only person who can truly choose you is you. Mm-hmm.
So what started to happen as you finally broke? What happened? Because you had to share then. Expose yourself.
Yeah. So I first started opening up to my mom and my sister. So he got into some legal challenges through drinking about 6 months before I left. And that spurred me to need to open up because things were imploding. It was almost like God being like, so, you say like, you will repeat the lessons until you learn them.
Yeah.
And it was God literally getting to the point, I believe, of like, lady, like, I'm going to just shake you until you actually recognize and embrace that this is not the situation that you should be in. And the only way out is for you to choose differently.
Right. And to fess up to what's going on and see it for what it is.
And live my truth.
Yes.
So started to open up to family. He did go to inpatient rehab, which I was like, it's going to be, holding out hope and like, he's going to be the hero in his own story. And then we're going to get back together and like figure this out. And unfortunately that wasn't how it transpired, at least in that window of time. And so confronted him on Thanksgiving, and his response was, I don't think I want to be sober. And I said, I don't think I want to be your wife. And so I actually called my best friend who lives here in Phoenix. We've been friends for 20 years. And opened up to her. And so she's also one of my only close friends who has been through divorce. And I was just like, I think I need to get it right. Like, what in the heck do I even do?
Right.
And the best advice she gave was, don't try to figure everything out. Just figure out what's next.
That's great advice. One step at a time.
One step at a time. And the first step was we talked, and, the first step was getting out physically, because if there wasn't space between us, I knew I would never be able to withdraw in the way that I needed to from the relationship. And at that point, I felt unsafe.
Wow. Why did you feel unsafe? In what way?
When an individual uses alcohol, and he had Xanax prescription and different things, it alters the chemistry of your brain over time.
Oh, for sure.
And there were moments where I literally felt like he was not in his body. And I just started having nudges, and honestly, like, I had to listen to my gut. I felt that I was in danger, not because he in his sane form would ever hurt me physically, because he never physically harmed me.
Right.
But I was so concerned with just of like where he was mentally, which was not himself. He was not the man that I married. Like, you know, he was in such an altered form that I worried that he was honestly in a state where, like, he wouldn't even remember. He wouldn't even know truly what he was doing.
That is a very scary place to be.
I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I mean, I was not on a good trajectory.
Oh.
And so...
And you were fearful of your environment.
I was deathly afraid.
Yeah, that's tough.
So I had multiple conversations with her, and we talked about different options for where to go. I knew I needed to go far away, and I needed to go somewhere where I had a network at least to start with, because of everything that I was going through. And so we decided Phoenix was actually a pretty great place. And she helped me find a rental house, because I was like, you know, I debated VRBO, and I was like, I feel like anything short term is going to give me a reason to go back.
Oh, yeah.
Because the last thing you want is an easy excuse to be like, well, maybe I just go back and we try again. You know, some things change.
So you really were worried that you were not going to really choose this for yourself.
Yeah. It's, you know, I was literally leaving behind 17 years of life.
So I have a question. So this came up when I watched the movie It Ends With Us. And that was one of the nudges that I kept getting. I told you when I called you. And I went and saw the movie. And having been a person who has never been in an abusive setting in a relationship ever in my life, I've been very blessed in that regard, to not have experienced an environment like that. But when I watched that movie, which is also based on a book, and I watched the perspective of her as the victim, and that, I'm covered in goosebumps, that was what was so mind-blowing to me. And it made me, as someone who didn't have any experience with that or any personal connection to that experience, because when you're on the outside and you see someone in a relationship that is very clearly not healthy, it's easy for the outsider to be like, why would you stay there? What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? And a lot of friendships are destroyed because of that. Yeah. And it's really sad and very tragic. But what I saw, which was new, was a perspective shift, which is how they told the story, at least in the movie. I don't know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know if the book is closely tied to the story that was portrayed in the movie. But what I realized was the victim in this story wasn't seeing it how other people were seeing it. I mean, really, this perspective was warped on her side, thinking, did that really happen? Like, am I crazy? Is this real? I mean, doubt. Real doubt.
Until his DUI, I believed truly everything was my fault.
Right. I think that's what happens
because you're manipulated, you're put into a false reality, you withdraw from and now I chose to be in this situation.
Well,
I was not handcuffed to a wall.
No, right? But you also weren't sharing, so you weren't even getting outside input.
No.
It was totally private.
Because of the shame that you feel and the guilt.
Yes. Exactly.
And so you just and it compounds and it compounds and it compounds. And it was a sequence of events that I believe was no other than like divine intervention of like, we're done here. Mm-hmm. He got into his accident. His BAC was like 4 times the legal limit.
Whoa.
I went and picked him up from the police station because he had totaled the car. Oh. And that was just like,
You can't
what are
hide.
we
You
doing?
can't even hide
like
that.
you can't. Yeah, we're here.
It's like, this is happening.
And I remember the police officer came out and talked to me and was like, most people are unconscious when their blood alcohol content is at that level. And the fact that he is walking around and driving a vehicle, like I want him as a human being to get help.
Right.
His attorney that we hired, so he had some similar situations much earlier in life. And we hired the same attorney, and he said the same thing. Like, you got to get help.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to do this for you again. And like, it just, yeah, like you need help. And that's where, you know, we started looking at inpatient rehab, and because I was like, that's the only way. And, you know, I will support you. Your family will support you. We are so blessed to have the resources and ability to
Get you help.
Real help. Let's get help.
So at this point, then, it was you came out to everybody and said, this is really happening. So clearly his family was in the know. Your family was in the know?
Our families were. I had not shared broadly with friends, with anyone at work, anything. Because again, it's a deep, I'm a very
private person.
A private person. I'm not blasting everything out into the universe.
Right.
And I still felt, honestly, a ton of not shame and guilt personally for continuing to choose this life, for continuing to choose this partnership, this marriage, this like protecting him. And I just wasn't ready. And it took, you know, multiple conversations, and then finally, you know, through his relapse and getting to the point of just feeling so unsafe in my own home that I knew I had to leave.
Yeah.
And one day, it was a Thursday in February, I didn't sleep. And I remember watching the sun come up, and I was just like, if you don't do this today, when are you going to do it? And you might not get tomorrow.
Wow.
And so I got up. I had important documents like pre-packed. So like title in my car, social security, passport.
So you were prepared to run
prepared.
if you had to, because you realized that this could get real bad real quick and you had to have an escape plan? Okay.
I packed some duffel bags of clothes, showered. He woke up, and I said, you know, and I had told him before, like, I think I need to leave. I think this isn't good for either of us. Like, I need to leave. And all I wanted him to do was just break down and be like, but I love you. And like, I'm committed to it. And he was just, it was like nothing. And
He just accepted your desire to leave?
Yeah.
That hurts.
And he said he couldn't watch me leave, and that I should take the dogs. And then he left.
He left so you could gather your things and leave. And that's what happened?
So I packed the car and put the dogs in, and we left.
Where did you go?
Phoenix.
You literally left in that moment, came to Phoenix at that time? You didn't go to your parents' house? Like, you literally left. Wow.
So the day before I left, my best friend here had called me and FaceTimed me from a house, like my top choice of the rentals that she sent. And she said, hey, I have time over lunch. I'm going to run over. Can you FaceTime? And we'll do a quick walkthrough. You know, so she's on. She's like, I would live here. It's cute. South Scottsdale. Seems safe. Like, I think it would be a great option for you. So I called her when I got in the car and said, I'm en route. I'll be there in 4 days. Can you like get the lease together? And, you know, at some point I'll stop and consign, you know, the lease. And so drove for 4 days with the dogs. And got out to Arizona. And
what happened with your job? Because I think a lot of people also feel stuck because of especially when you're leaving in a relationship, you have to suddenly become totally independent financially.
I did open up to my manager and a small subset of humans who I'm just really close to, I worked there for a long time, and said, here are the headlines. I am moving to Phoenix. I'm probably going to need some space in this window. And there was, compassion, empathy, understanding, support.
That's awesome.
Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we all endure different challenges and different seasons of life. And I have felt that's the one thing that I think I am most grateful for. I am most grateful for, honestly, the financial ability to leave, because I know that and children are what preclude a lot of people from ever being able to do that.
Or having the courage to choose to do it.
Having the courage to choose. And the support that I got.
Yeah.
I know so many survivors, I don't use the word victim, I use the word survivors
Love
of
that.
abuse, are questioned. You see it publicly, but I know a lot of people personally that, but they seem like such a great, or, it's my son, or it's my, and I was never questioned. I was just always supported. And honestly, it's not about him.
Right.
It's about me.
Yeah, for sure.
And I chose that relationship. I chose that marriage. I chose that life for as long as I did. But now I'm choosing differently. And now I'm choosing myself every single day. I choose to put in the work, because when I got out here, I was in rough shape.
I bet.
And it's taken so much deep internal work. Reestablishing a relationship with God, reestablishing friendships, relationships with my family that had really suffered during that time. But most importantly, cultivating and investing in the relationship with myself. Because if that's not healthy and loving and safe and beautiful, nothing else will be in life. And so
Take me on that journey. How did that journey go? Because that's
the
stuff.
Yeah, that's the stuff. I was introduced, my best friend introduced me to a woman who still today is my life coach on the drive out here, because I was obviously an emotional wreck. And we just started to unpack. And I'm still unpacking. I will forever be unpacking. I will forever be healing different parts of me. I will forever be embracing new corners and dark sides of me and light sides of me that I didn't know exist, or like I knew existed but didn't want to address or embrace before.
Isn't it fascinating? That's the best part of this life.
It's the best part of this life. And through that, just healed a lot of trauma, released the fear, released a lot of emotions that I had been holding on to for years and years. And finally started to find peace again. And then I wear a bracelet that says gratitude. Very early on, embraced a mindset and way of being to be grateful.
It's everything.
I have so many things in life to be grateful for. And the more I leaned into gratitude, the more joy I found.
Isn't that amazing? It's like the magic sauce.
It totally is. And so,
that's perspective. That's a perspective shift. In order to see and feel gratitude, it sometimes takes a perspective shift.
And it's just so powerful. Because as human beings, it typically, not always, but typically takes a situation in life that breaks us or almost breaks us as a human to drive this transformation. And it's so easy. That's why I don't use the word victim ever. Because again, like I chose, right? I was not handcuffed in the basement. I was choosing that life. I was choosing to accept that behavior.
Have you forgiven yourself for that?
I have. And I went to Medjugorje, Bosnia with Katie and crew in June. And there was, my divorce still wasn't final. And that was my intention for the trip. I was like, I need to be fully untethered. I've done all of this work and I'm doing, and I just need to be like legally untethered. And we did a hike to a very holy site and prayed. And so Medjugorje is noted for the Mother Mary and her presence, and
you should look at, if you're listening, look it up. There's some really cool documentaries about what that place. It's a very magical place.
And so I'm sitting on Apparition Hill praying, and Mother Mary literally came to me and was like, my dear, because I was like, I've forgiven him, like I don't know what else and she came to me and she was super straight. She was like, my dear, you need to forgive yourself.
Yes.
And through the rest of the week, I really focused on what am I holding on to and how do I fully and completely forgive myself. And got a call from got an email from my attorney in the middle of the night in Europe that he had signed. And we were done here.
Wow.
And so I believe everything has to happen for a reason. But it's truly, regardless of the situation that you go through, whether it's a partnership or a career that you stay in or whatever, that becomes toxic, and that catalyst to propel you into personal healing and growth just the shift to this life. You have to forgive yourself.
It's huge.
You have to forgive yourself.
Huge. Yeah. It's hard for us to do. It's hard. It's not an easy road to forgive ourselves because we tend to, like you kept saying, that's why I asked you the question, because you kept saying, I chose, it's my fault. Not my fault. You never said that, but you said, I chose. Yeah. It was always up to me. I had the choice. I choose. And yes, you did. But with choices, even though they're ours, we tend to think, I chose that. The guilt, the shame, all the things that come with that choice that I made. The only thing that can clear that out so you can be in gratitude is to forgive yourself of it. Yeah. Period. I mean, that's it.
And now the reframe for me is everything is a blessing and a lesson. And I believe the faster you receive the lesson, then you break through to the next thing. Because that life for 17 years that we were together was the same lesson on repeat. I just wasn't willing to choose the hard thing and choose myself and finally do the work and transform my life into the beautiful oasis of joy and peace. And it's incredible. Every day I am so grateful for all of it. And I'm grateful for everything in my journey that led me here, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of that.
Right.
And so it's forgiving yourself, but it's also embracing the journey. It's embracing the lessons and what in every experience that we have through the choices that we're making can help us grow and can help us ultimately be a better person and hopefully bring more love and light and joy to the world.
Right.
That's my frame, and it's a beautiful place to be. And again, just gratitude for all of it. When you're living it, it's painful.
Yeah.
But now I get to be on the other side. And so telling my story, sharing, the book is really the first couple of chapters, talking about what my situation looked like, just because I think it's important to paint the example, to your point, of when, especially if it is emotional abuse versus physical's more black and white, right? Emotional, there tends to be a lot of manipulation and just other tactics.
And that's really common that most people don't address or even see.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's huge.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so
it's very, very real.
To bring that example to life. But then it's really about my journey after choosing myself.
Right.
And how to find yourself again, how to deeply know and love yourself, different modalities, different things that have worked for me. But ultimately it's people, places, and things. Where you choose to be, the community that you surround yourself with, and how you choose to spend your time. Because I got a lot of questions of like, how do you have time to do all of this? And I was like, well, I don't watch TV. I don't, like I work. And then really a lot of my personal time, even through spending time with friends and community, is really centered mostly on just becoming a better person and growing.
I have a question for you. So you are a career-driven business leader. How much of that is for you and how much of that is for outside of you to feel fulfilled? Any of it?
I think at different stages of life, it was for some external fulfillment, but really it's for me.
You really enjoy it.
I love what I do. I love what I do. I work with incredible people on incredible brands. I love problem solving. And I think I've had 15 different roles in 19 years. So it's a constant opportunity to grow and learn and have impact. And I think like we're multifaceted human beings, right? We need a lot of different things to thrive holistically. And that's one part of me. It doesn't define me. It's an important part of who I am. I'm super driven and I love what I get to do.
Right.
But now there are so many other parts of me. But I there's so much synergy in them. I show up as a very different leader today than I did a few years ago.
That's what I was going to ask you because I'm sure I would imagine, given this process that you've been in of evolvement, that story probably looked different before than it does now.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I have space.
Right.
I have emotional
space. Because you are now every day choosing yourself before you choose anything else.
Yep.
And that internal work, of course, is going to shift in every other facet of your life, including your job, your career, and in beautiful ways, I'm sure. I would imagine, because just like most things, once we do that, our filled selves that we fill ourselves up with starts to overflow onto everything else we touch and experience and encounter.
Yep.
So your
100%.
light starts to shine through in every facet of your life. It just can't help but do that. And everybody else can see it. And all of a sudden, your light is shining a whole different way.
Yep.
So it's cool because I say that because some people I think that some people can make the assumption that somebody who works a lot and is busy with their job that they say they love, which they do, people can tend to think, well, are they just doing that and they're back in their same pattern and they're looking for outside acknowledgement, outside, acceptance? But I don't think that's the case because I think that people that do love what they do, they still are choosing themselves. If they weren't choosing themselves, they wouldn't continue to choose that.
Right.
And that's it. So it's in everything that you do. I think that's a really important point because people may still think, oh, that sounds like more of their old ways. Well, actually, no, it's part of the thing that they love most about themselves. That's choosing you.
Yeah. And it's, it's the constant, life is always change. The only constant is change, right? Everything's constantly changing, evolving. And it's just re-engaging with yourself, challenging yourself. Like, are these still my goals? Mm-hmm. Why are they like, has something changed? Has something shifted?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think embracing that too. Establishing boundaries, right? Like I no longer, there were times in my career where I worked whenever I needed to work, right? And now it's like, hey, not before 7 a.m., right? I embrace that we're on the West Coast and, I get to live where I want to live, but, having those boundaries and being able to put it down at night, which I didn't used to be able to do, because we are whole people and each part of our lives is very important. It wouldn't be part of our lives if it wasn't important and a choice that we were making.
Right.
But having those clear boundaries of the role that it plays and the space that it takes up, that's how I think you effectively navigate it. And then just continuing to revisit, like, how does it make me feel? Mm-hmm. Does it fill me up? Do I end most weekdays when I'm working energized? Like, your body tells you. That's the thing.
Yes.
My body's always been real clear. My intuition's always been I just always haven't been willing to listen.
That's everything.
Which is like, you just know when you're in the presence of other people. Like, are you comfortable? Are you anxious? Like,
Your body will tell
just
you.
sit with it for 10 seconds and then just listen.
Isn't it amazing how much your body talks to you?
Yeah.
It's an amazing vessel of information, of intuition that your soul is trying to convey to you.
For sure.
Of any environment that you're in. So you're right. It takes a lot of quiet and actually listening to figure that what's meant for you and what's not meant for you.
Yep.
So I love your story. I love your journey. I'm really excited that people are going to hear this because I think this happens a lot in the world, sadly.
The statistic is like 1 in 4.
I believe that. And I don't say sadly because, like you said, it is a choice. However, I think the awareness around it, people don't even realize that they're in a situation that they're in because they're not sharing it. So they're living it alone.
Yeah.
I think that's where most people in situations like this with emotional abuse get stuck because then you start to question up here, am I making this up? Is it my fault? And again, that was what I saw in that movie. It was physical abuse as an example in that movie, but it wasn't over the top. So it really was psychological abuse.
Yeah.
And emotional abuse. And people listening, again, listening to your body, when you're with someone that you know and you love and something does not feel right about someone that you know, and ask them and tell them they can trust you to talk to you, because sometimes people just need someone to listen to them, someone they can trust enough to open up and just share a little glimpse of information that their friend, you, might be able to give some insight to them and say, let's talk about this further. What else is going on? And then it can actually open up the awareness for that person to see it so then they can make a change, right?
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Through community, through social media, there are actually a ton of resources. But the first step is embracing the type of situation that you're in and what it is.
Yeah.
And the words abuse, domestic violence are hard words.
Mm-hmm. And you don't want to accept that.
You don't want to accept it. You don't want to talk about it. It's still very stigmatized. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, honestly, a lot of abusers are not I think I'm going to be an abusive. They're not psychologically aware of what their actions are and the impact that they're having.
Right.
And so again, it's not a blame. It's literally just awareness of, I think there's a lot of, it's always toxic relationships. I'm is it toxic, or are we just talking about, generally speaking, abusive relationships?
Right.
That can go both ways, right? Mm-hmm. Again, once the foundation gets cracked and resentment comes in and other things, it takes relationships in general take a significant amount of work, but a significant amount of work to work through that and not let it get to a space of being, manipulative and just hurtful, frankly.
And turns into a cycle.
It does.
A pattern
and it becomes
and a
norm, right? It's if you lift weights every day, you build muscle,
right? And
you don't even realize it, right? But it just becomes your norm. Mm-hmm. It's like any habit.
Exactly.
It just becomes your life, and so you accept it as normal.
And you're blind to even realizing that it's not really what is making you happy anymore.
Yeah.
So it's that awareness. So your book, where can people find your book?
On Amazon. So Choose Yourself, Jessica Bennett. It's available on Amazon, both Kindle version as well as a physical book, and on social media. So at Choose Yourself Community on Instagram.
Talk about your community a little bit, because that's the next thing that's happening. I want to talk about this. People know.
So it's in the works. But I found, again, especially landing in Phoenix and over the past year and a half, just the blessing of having and still establishing a beautiful community here. And community is everything. And as I started to plug in, so there was a moment actually when I was writing the book last winter, and I was like, should I be doing this? Started to question. And I had posted some things on just my personal Instagram about being in Phoenix and kind of a little bit about my healing journey. And I actually had a friend from high school who I had not spoken to in probably close to 20 years message me and say, she sent me a picture of her and said, "This is my new apartment. Because of you sharing your story, I recognized my own.
Wow.
And I left my husband and it was abusive and just and so it reinforced, again, she's a professional woman in accounting and, like they have a family and live in, it's everywhere.
Appearances.
It's everywhere. And so that just reinforced to me because I had prayed about it. And then the next morning that happened and I was like, okay, we're clear. Thank you.
Ask and you shall receive.
Be ready to receive if you're going to ask for it. And
yeah.
we reconnected. I was connected through like different friends that knew of people that were kind of on the other side of abusive relationships. And I realized, and then started reading as I was writing the book, statistics and just different available groups. But then I realized like this is so stigmatized. So unless you personally know someone and personally know that they have been through it, you're not just going to like bring it up to people or want to talk about it. And so creating a safe space of like-minded and hearted, right, to say this is available to you. So if you think you might be in a relationship and want to ask some questions in a safe space, we're here.
Yeah.
If you know you're in one, if you just left a relationship, if you're 10 years removed and you want to support others, just cultivating a community of survivors.
I love that.
That can help educate. So our tagline, our mission is educate, empower, and end abuse.
That's cool.
And so it's very early stages trying to figure out what it looks like. But I just feel so called to serve because I am truly so grateful and blessed to be where I am and to support other women, but other human beings because it's not just women, to make sure people are educated, to make sure they're aware of what's going on, and then have that empathy, compassion, support as they're navigating really hard things.
Yeah.
Both emotionally, physically, spiritually, with family, legally. It's a lot to navigate as a human being. And again, I'm so fortunate and blessed, but just the amount, taking away all of like the financial, all of that stuff, just the courage and bravery that it takes to call it and to leave a person that you love, to leave a life in some, if not all capacities and start over. That is
very brave,
very brave and
very hard to do. Yeah. That's why I think this is such an important topic because like you said, 1 in 4, that's staggering.
Yeah.
I don't know that people realize how common this situation is in relationships and how stifling and difficult and challenging it is. And the doubt of these people that are truly experiencing this kind of abuse and questioning. And I love that you're creating a community that's safe for people to say, like I said, put your toe in the water. It's like, am I crazy here or is this not right? Because this doesn't feel good. Like, I don't feel good.
I was fortunate to have a friend who I could finally call and say, this is what's happening. These are the words being said to me. These are the threats. And the words were like, holy shit, you got to get out.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
And you didn't even know.
And
you were questioning it.
It wasn't until I was actually saying the words that I was like, oh, okay, we're here.
Yeah.
And it just, because again, it's your day-to-day. It's your norm.
Yeah, I know. You become immune to it. Where you're like, oh, it's just another day.
There was, going back to my grandmother, so her second husband passed away 6 years before she did. And she was in this beautiful community, retirement community, and had a condo. And I remember she shared those were the best years of her life. And that was such a pivotal thing for me, because it was like she chose till death do them part, but I didn't have to.
I know, and that's amazing and brave.
And people don't have to. I think I believe in the sanctity of marriage. I'm not, but at the same time, sometimes we choose the wrong thing, and that's okay.
Well, and the thing is, in any relationship, whether it's a positive,
marriage, a family member,
you constantly have to choose yourself in those relationships, period.
100%.
And sometimes the relationship doesn't survive in that choice.
Yep.
And that's what we talk about so much here, is about self-love and putting yourself in the center.
Yeah.
Aligning to you and saying, I choose me over anything else. And you know what? Once you know what that feels like, you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, well, that's really awesome, but that sucks because that's going to end that, and that's going to end that, and probably that. But you know what? I know too much now.
So I love Colorado, love the mountains, and actually outlined my book last fall. I was up in southwestern Colorado near Telluride.
You wrote that book quick?
And yeah.
Wow.
And, driver. And so I'm in nature. It's early October and all the leaves are changing. And I had a moment and did some reading and reflecting on, we all come from nature. Like, I believe we're so connected to nature.
Oh, yeah.
And every fall, so like the earth rotates and we experience 4 seasons, even in Arizona. Looks a little different, but, and every fall is where like you release.
It's a die-off.
It's a die-off. It's a release.
It is a release,
right?
yeah.
And then it's a rest, and then it's a regrowth, and then it's a season of abundance. And then you cycle through it. And I think that was part of, so through that, like seeking extra, it's like society, a lot of it was like societally inflicted, right? Of like, everything's for 2 people and partnerships, and that's the expectation. And anniversaries, longevity. We've been we've been married for 80, but are you happy?
Right.
Exactly. Congratulations. Are you still happy?
Are you
living
still
your
choosing
best
yourself
life?
in that?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful analogy. I use it in the book of like, nature does it. Shed your leaves. Like, and it's okay to outgrow things. And
yes,
as your life shifts and different seasons evolve in your life, to sunset different areas and relationships and things, people, places, and things. And to be consistently evaluating, it's additive or it's destructive.
right.
It's supporting your flywheel of growth or it's taking from it and hindering you. And that's hard, especially when it comes to human beings that have been part of your life for a long time, that you deeply love. You can love people from afar. Or people can play different roles in your life.
Exactly.
And that's okay. And I had to learn that.
That's a tough one to learn. That's a tough one to learn, because especially with relationships, because they shift, they change. They don't always look the same. Doesn't mean they have to completely go away.
No.
But they change.
And you can choose to work at them, right? And some might last a lifetime.
Right.
But a lot won't. And that's okay. And so I think like releasing those expectations that I had built to just embrace, beautiful friendships for what they are in the season, and where life brings us closer, and then potentially we're further apart for a while. And that doesn't mean we don't love each other or, we're not there for one another, but it's just the ebbs and flows of life.
Yeah, for sure.
And being comfortable with that, because I'm coming home to myself every single day.
Yes, exactly. Well, the thing that I always say too is we are all creators and we create our worlds. So when we are creating our world from a place of self and our own centeredness and our own connection and alignment to our higher selves, God, creator, whatever word you want to place there.
Yep.
When you're at that choice of you vibrate at a higher level. And when you vibrate at a higher level, you're attracting the things that are meant for you. They just show up, they arrive in people, places, and things.
Yep.
And when you're not vibrating in that level, you can attract the things that are not meant for you, and they hurt. And you're like, oh, okay, what is this? What am I to learn from this? I attracted it. Like you said, I chose it. I brought this in. So, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But when you continue to come back and you choose yourself, it becomes very clear.
Yeah.
You get clarity on what is and what isn't meant for you, because it naturally happens. I love that analogy with the seasons and the world and the earth, because we are all connected. All I talk about here is that we are truly so connected to one another and to everything in the universe.
Yep.
I mean, everything is connected. We all play our role in it. That's why everybody's story, everybody's purpose, everybody's passion serves a place in this world. It's delivered in a different way. It's packaged up however it's meant for you to deliver. So when you can choose yourself and really be aligned with who you are and your own self-love and nurturing and compassion, those things blossom into the world and they serve their purpose. It's awesome. Sure. I mean, you're creating a movement. You're creating a community of connection, a safe place to go. So thank you for that.
For sure. I say in the book, and I firmly believe it, the most selfless thing you can do is choose yourself.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because you operate, not choosing yourself and being down here, and then the impact that has, because you're a deeply connected human in this world, through choosing yourself and operating at a higher level, a higher frequency, bringing more light than dark, that has positive impact on the world and your relationships and your work and your creativity and everything that you're contributing.
It's a ripple effect.
It's a ripple effect.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like to use the word, instead of selfish, selfful. And instead of being self-centered, you're a centered self. So there's a big difference on, again, perspective. Yeah. It's just how you look at it. So 100%. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your story and creating the community that you're building. I think it's going to do some really amazing things for people in this world. So people know where to find you. You talked about your Instagram. I'll put those in the notes below as well, and where to find her amazing book, Choose Yourself. I highly recommend picking it up. I have not read it yet, but I plan to. But I'm grateful to you for being here and sharing everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank all of you for listening and being part of this. If you're listening, you can find us on YouTube as well and view. I do have a channel there where all of the podcasts live. If you want further information about anything, you can go to my website, tammytuesday.com. I do offer all kinds of things. I have a blog and I have healing sessions that I offer for people that are local. If you're interested in that, to explore your healing journey, diving into your heart, which is what I call it. Also, our Instagram and social media is at Tammy Tuesday Life. You can see all kinds of things there as well. Always leaving you with lots of love and light. And remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.